Hey everybody, welcome back to the Otaku Crypt and the second of the anime vlogs. So the first vlog was all about my personal anime origins, starting from when I was very young, and I mean young, 5 years old, all the way through adolescence and high school and college and into adulthood, and basically getting to me where I am right now, which is an old otaku who reminisces a little too much. However, for this vlog, I kind of wanted to talk about one of the shows that was, I think, my first experience with what I like to call an all-consuming fandom, where this show was everything when it was on, and it was complete and utter obsession. And it was also one I got to share with friends, which was a new thing, because when we all came into anime, we all came from very different tastes, and we all converged on this particular one. And the one I'm talking about is Tite Kubo's Bleach. Now, Bleach, like many anime that we were introduced to at the time, we saw on Bionics. We saw the English dub, which included a lot of the familiar voices at the time, including Johnny Yong Bosch as the main character Ichigo. But Bleach, as I will say to anybody who asks about it, is a pretty difficult show to get into at first, because it is a longer format show, although in retrospective it's nothing compared to some other ones. However, the thing with Bleach is, I like to say, there's a good 20 episodes of setup before you even get into the main plot. And I know for a lot of people that is too much of a commitment to get to the point, and I understand where you're coming from. But if you are willing to make that initial investment, I think it pays off really well. But what I want to talk about with Bleach isn't so much the show itself, but the way the fandom was an all-consuming force in my life. Like I said, with those initial 20 episodes that we saw in the English dub, I wasn't completely sold on it. I mean, it was cool looking, it had great swordplay and kind of an interesting take on, the afterlife and ghosts and malignant spirits, and the swords were really cool. But it wasn't until I met someone who was more of a fan of the Japanese and was therefore much further ahead of me, who was able to give me, not full-on spoilers, but enough little tidbits to make me hungry for what comes later. And that just led into an extreme amount of binge watching to get caught up to the Japanese. And this was about when the show was around 100 episodes in, I believe. I, started watching various bootlegs, fan subs, all sorts of not completely reputable places to watch it. However, funny side note here, Bleach was the reason we discovered YouTube. Yes, that's right, kids. Back in the day, YouTube was just full of pirated shows. I mean, it's still there, but I mean, it's the reason we went there in the first place. And we watched a ton of fan-subbed Bleach on YouTube. Funny side story. But going from there, it got to the point where we were watching the show weekly. There were basically fan sub equivalents of what Crunchyroll is now. They would get the episode the night before in Japan, sub it overnight, and put it out the next day. And I don't even know if this site even exists anymore, but there was a fantastic fan subbing site called Databayo, which comes from Naruto, the thing that he tacks on to the end of every one of his sentences that got translated in English as "believe it." Yeah, Databayo. So, fun side note for you Naruto fans and people who might have used that site but never caught on. Yes, we were watching weekly. It was the only show we would talk about, and that is a show so full of details, which for someone like me who just lives and breathes the minute details of something I'm into, Bleach was crack, because Bleach has one of the most extensive casts in anime, I think. And not just to say that there are a ton of characters, but there are a ton of characters who are really fully fleshed out in terms of having backstories, getting full episodes to explore them and their characters. Everything in Bleach has a name. Characters have a name, and usually very old traditional Japanese sounding names. Their swords all have names. A lot of times those are even more arcane and hard to pronounce. And sometimes their techniques have names. So on top of this cast of probably near 100 people who do actually have stories to them, they also have all kinds of things attached to them that are named and have details and often have personalities of their own. For those of you who watch Bleach, you know I'm talking about Sanpakuto, which is every character's weapon. They'll have names and some of them get, you know, fully fleshed out personalities on top of it. So that is to say, with this show, there was so much to take in, and I took in all of it. I've lost a lot of it since, admittedly, although with a bit of a refreshing watch today, it starts to come back. One of my favorite games to play, as you can see behind me, is a Bleach wall scroll. It's the 13 captains, and sometimes to test my memory, I'll just sit here and see if I can remember all of their names. I usually get caught up on 2, and it's usually Komamura, which is weird because you think you'd remember him, Foxface and all. And it was not only just the show itself. The obsession dipped into listening to the soundtrack, which was incredibly extensive and incredibly different for a show. It was very rock and roll heavy in terms of its original score and incorporated a lot of English vocals. And my fellow, deep Bleach fans will know all about the Bleach Beat collections, which were these anthologies of Bleach music. Every character had a profile song, every major fight had its own composition, and speaking of music, something I love to bring up to people who remember Bleach but maybe weren't full on into it, there were a series of stage musicals for Bleach, and I got equally obsessed with them, on their own, almost completely separate from the show itself, the rock musical Bleach series, which were these stage shows that started off with kind of a rough start. The first one wasn't well received, and then they revamped it and called it Cyan, which I believe means another flame, and that one launched the Bleach musicals into the stratosphere in Japan. And they ended up doing a total of 5 plays, 3 that cover the story of basically the first 62 episodes, and 2 that were kind of, I guess you'd call them review shows. They were basically the characters in character, but with the fourth wall completely removed, and it was a lot of comedy bits and just random songs. It was so much fun to watch, and I recommend watching them, A, for nostalgia, B, because they're actually really well done. The way they managed to make transforming swords work in a couple cases is very creative in terms of practical effects. And also for those bits, the fourth wall bits, so funny. A couple of them you kind of have to get Japanese comedy to appreciate, but I love them nonetheless. And in case you didn't know, there are Bleach musicals. Seriously, go check them out. So yeah, Bleach. It was definitely my first big fandom, I think. I mean, Inuyasha was a thing, but it was kind of the only show on at the time, and that's why we all obsessed about that one. Naruto, the appreciation for Naruto really came later, I think. It and Bleach kind of ran parallel, but I think I was always more of a Bleach guy than a Naruto guy, even though I did Naruto cosplay. I did way more Bleach cosplay. And it was once Bleach got a bit bogged down in filler and then also eventually went on a giant hiatus, it still actually hasn't done its last major arc in the anime. I still hope that they do it, just because that's a show that I think for a lot of people, and it being such a big deal to anime in the early 2000s, I think it deserves to be finished, but we all know the production industry for anime is super weird that way. Once Bleach was pretty much done with anime-wise, the manga continued on, of course, but had its own hiatuses. It was after that there wasn't really anything new that captivated me in the same way. I definitely became equally obsessed with some shows later on, but it was more of a reach back. I think after Bleach, I got really into Saint Seiya, which started in the 80s. And since Bleach, I don't think there has been a show that has truly captivated me in the same way, with maybe the exception of Kill la Kill, but it's such a short form show, it's just not the same. And even though I definitely got really into One Piece, it wasn't the same. So yeah, the reminiscing of kind of my first all-out fandom. Definitely funny thinking back on it, especially with the episode count, because Bleach, I believe, ends around 360 episodes, which at the time we thought was so long. And then you think, oh, One Piece is 800 episodes long. The collective of Naruto is 1,000+ episodes long. So really, if you're a person who watches long-form shows, Bleach might not be that intimidating anymore. And surprisingly, of those 360 some odd episodes, there are only 3 smallish filler arcs. So if you had always heard about Bleach, but maybe you weren't someone who got on that bandwagon, maybe now's the time to go back and check it out. It's definitely something I will always hold very near and dear in my heart. And some of those characters are just wonderful, and it's one of the coolest action shows in terms of how fighting is done. And again, also awesome music. So thank you for listening to my musings on this particular topic. This was the second of a series of vlogs I am doing this month. I'll include a link at the end of this one so you can go check out the previous one where I talk about how I got into anime. And for the next one, I've got a couple topics in mind, but if you guys have any suggestions for anything you might like to hear me talk about from anime's past, I am always open to suggestions. And let me know if you guys were a Bleach fan too, or what was your first big all-consuming anime fandom. Let me know in the comments, and remember to go to www.otakucrypt.com to see everything that we do. Anime North is getting closer and closer and closer, and we're going to have probably so much content from that weekend. We'll be probably rolling it out for 2 months, but keep an eye out on the website. We're going to be doing stuff in the meantime to keep you guys entertained. And again, thank you so much for staying through this and watching and supporting. It means so much. So again, thank you. We'll see you next time.